I've been making progress on the smaller throttle, and by smaller you can see, oops. Today I'm going to walk you through some of the process that I used to work on this throttle, which is a smaller version of this throttle. Obviously this is a very early version. Welcome to another episode. This episode is a little bit longer. I'm going to be getting in a little bit more into using Fusion 360 to design the smaller throttle. And what you see here is a 3D printed case that I printed using this printer back here. This is a workhorse that I've had for probably 5 or 6 years. I'm not sure exactly when I got it, but it's been doing a really great job. And as you'll see, I like to, once I finish a design, print something out with a 3D printer so that I can hold it in my hand and feel what it's going to feel like. So let's head to the computer. I'm going to show you what's involved in changing the design from what I had before, making it a little nicer. And then I'm going to skip forward because it took about 5 or 6 hours to finish this design, and then show you a comparison of this with the other throttles. So let's head over to the computer. In my last video, you may have noticed something, which is if I turn on the sketch that I used, there's this rectangle down here. This is actually a part that goes down, and so I want to make sure I have enough clearance here. Now, I'm pretty sure I have enough clearance, but I haven't modeled it, so it's pretty easy to add that to this. So I'll just go ahead and say extrude, and then to make it a little bit easier, I'll turn this over so that I can select this piece here and this piece. And in this particular case, I don't really care how large this is because it's not the vertical dimension that matters, but the X dimension here. So I'll go ahead and add that and turn the sketch back off. Save this, and then when I go back to the case, it says that there is one component out of date, so I'll go ahead and update that, which is the mini PCB. And then I'll turn as soon as that's done, I'll turn the top off so that we can see. One of the things that happens sometimes when you modify parts is joints get a little bit confused. So I need to go back here to where I added the circuit board. There we go. And then here's the joint, and what I need to do is I need to fix that joint. Now recall that I had a reference here, so I'll go ahead and show just those two things. And then I'll edit this joint. And the part that you can see that it moved the joint there. I have no idea why it moved the joint there, but we'll go back and add it here again. And now it should be back to the way I want it. So if I move forward in the timeline, hopefully everything, yes, it worked. So everything is now back in place. So I'll hide the reference geometry, show the bottom again, and you can see that it does interfere at the moment. Now, I have two ways that I can handle that. One way is I can simply move everything up this way. There is more of a gap here, so I do have room to do that. But I have another idea of something I want to try as well, which is this bottom here is flat, and I was thinking about having a slight curvature on the bottom. Okay, before we get started, let me give you kind of a strategy of what I want to accomplish. We want a little bit of extra room down here for this extension of the circuit board, and this is actually a part that's on the back of the circuit board. And I also want the curves here, and I'd like to make this so that it's not flat. So I'm going to try some things, and we're going to probably have to adjust some things. The first thing I want to do is go back to this component here, and I want to go back to before, let's see, we add the fillets. So this part right here is where I added the draft. And then I want to activate this component. I'm going to create a sketch that's perpendicular to this face. So I need to insert a plane at an angle, and I'll make it 93 degrees because this is at 3 degrees. Okay, then we can go ahead and say create sketch. And I'm going to project this line here because I'm going to use it for making the spline come straight out from there. And you can see it's at a 3-degree angle. Okay, so going back to the top, so we want to add a spline. And when I add a spline like this, I usually add 3 points and then double click. And I add 3 points because otherwise you'll get a straight line. We're going to remove this point here, but only after anchoring the 2 endpoints. So to anchor the 2 endpoints, first I'm going to make this one tangent, like so. And then I'm going to take the other one and make this horizontal. And then I'm also going to make this so it's vertical here, because I'm going to create a line, which I'll do right now. And actually, I don't want this. I just realized I'm going to start over because I want this endpoint here to be coincident with this line here. It's still tangent, but I want a distance between these because I'm going to cut off a little bit of this edge and then add down here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a dimension here and then select this point. There we go. And I'm just going to make that 0.1 inches below. And then I'm also going to want to make this, I'm actually going to add a line first. So go ahead and add the line. I'll make this construction, and then I'll dimension this also as about 0.1 inches. Now you're going to see that this creates a shape that isn't what I want. So I'll go ahead and grab onto these control points and make it so it's a shape that I kind of like. And that looks like a good place right there. Okay, so now what I want to do is mirror this across to the other side. So I'll say mirror. I'll select this and then mirror it across this, and that's exactly what I want. I'm going to end up cutting this little section off first and then adding this in. So to be able to cut that off, I need to add some lines like this. And you can see that makes it so I can cut it. I also want to add a line here so that I'll be able to extrude this. Okay, so let me go ahead and start with the cut. So I'll say extrude. And I should be able to say all for this. Let's try that. No, that didn't work, so I'll just drag it across. And you can see that cuts off the edge there. Now we want to add. So I'll go back in here and make that sketch visible again. And we'll add this part here. So I'll say extrude again. And then we'll go like this. We also have to add to the top because there's a 3-degree angle, so I'll make this two-sided. And we'll cut this off in a minute. You'll see how we'll do that. That didn't work. Let's try that again. Oh, I know why it didn't work. It's because I had it was set to cut. So let's edit the feature and make sure it's join. And now we have what we want. Okay, so the next thing is to cut this off. And what I'm going to do is use this original sketch as the profile to use for cutting. But to be able to do that, I need to go and I need to modify that sketch to add a rectangle around it. Okay, so now I can go in here and say extrude, and I can now do two-sided again. And that should there we go. That should cut off the part that I don't want, giving me a nice shape. That produces a hard edge there, so I'm going to go ahead and add a fillet. And I'll say 0.2 and see how that looks. Yep, that looks pretty good. So I like how that looks now. Moving forward, this has yellow complaint, and the reason it's complaining is because the line down here doesn't exist anymore. So I'll just go ahead and redo it to get rid of the complaint. Now we can open this up with a shell, and I'm going to fast forward and see how we're doing with the placement of everything. And let me go back here And you can see that's actually pretty darn good. I can probably move this curve up a little bit. So I'll do some adjusting of it to get things just right. I also need to find out, Stuart added a chamfer on here. I need to find out how much of a chamfer he added. So I'm going to go ahead and, I really like this. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that to the rest. You'll notice that it's not on the top either. So I'm going to need to propagate to that, to the top as well. So I have some more work, and I'm going to do that offline and then come back and you can see the result. I stopped recording because I realized I had a lot more work to do than I was originally thinking. What you see here is the result of working for another 5 or 6 hours, something like that. I got the bottom and the top curved the way I liked. I did a lot of other things as well, such as recessing the display the way it should be. I cut out the openings for the keypad, as you can see there, and I also added the mounting hardware. So you can see that better if I change the opacity of the top and the bottom. And if we look at it sideways, you can see there's the screw that goes through this boss on the top and into the bottom. And likewise here where we have the display. The other thing is I added some bosses here. You can see these little ridges that are spacers between the shell and the keypad to hold it in place. It's hard to get an idea of what something will actually be like just looking at it on the screen. So I like to use my 3D printer to print out test samples, and you can see this is very rough on the inside because I had to use support to print this on my 3D printer, and that's what it came out. But it does mean that I can at least kind of get an idea what it's going to feel like. So I can see that, yep, my thumb will work well with the wheel that's going to be here, the thumb wheel. And then there are actually a knob here, and then thumb wheels here. And then on this side, not as easy, but it should work out pretty well. So overall, I'm pretty happy with the design. And here's a size comparison, so you can see the size of this throttle compared to our advanced throttle, and also compared to one of the more popular throttles on the market. So it's definitely going to be smaller, it's going to be ergonomic, and I'm pretty excited about it. I need to do a little bit more work on the 3D design. Once I do that, I think what I'm going to do is go to my CNC milling machine, cut out some pieces of plastic that are thick enough, and then use that to mill out some masters of the part, some test pieces. The reason I want to use the CNC machine for that rather than sending out for 3D printing is A, I can do it here. I don't have to wait 2 weeks to get it from Shapeways. But B, more importantly, the result I'm going to get will be a lot more accurate than what I would get from Shapeways. And I want to test some of the fit and finish of the parts to see what kind of tolerances I can get. Whereas when I made the parts for the larger throttle from Shapeways, I had a lot more tolerances, well, I should say looser tolerances, so I had bigger gaps than I really wanted. So I want to see if I can get it fine-tuned better. And that'll be more representative of what the final product will be like once it's injection molded. Anyway, thanks for watching, and see you next time.